Hello and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast. I am Cindy Ingram, your host and the founder of Art Class Curator and the Curated Connections Library. We're here to talk about teaching art with purpose and inspiration, from the daily delights of creativity to the messy mishaps that come with being a teacher. Whether you're driving home from school or cleaning up your classroom for the 15th time today, take a second, take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Art Class Curator podcast. This is Cindy Ingram, and today I've got Madalyn Gregory again with me in the Zoom studio. Hi, Madalyn.
Hello.
I want to say in the studio like it was fancy, but we're not in a studio. We're in our offices. You're in your closet.
So. I am in my closet. I live on a very loud street.
So what we're going to talk about with you today is the Art Class Curator Summer Workshop. And this is probably my favorite thing that we do every year. It is the thing that sort of fills my soul the most. It's the thing I enjoy the most. It gives me the most energy and excitement for the work that I do. And this year we've been doing this we've done it 4 times. And this year was the year I think we finally were like, yes, this is how the workshop should be. This is perfect. And well, it can never be perfect. I'll tell you how we're going to make it different next year too. But so we're going to tell you about it, tell you how you can join us next summer, and just talk about our experience with the workshop. You ready?
I am so excited.
Okay. So what we do every year is, if some of you know, I used to work in museum education. And one of my roles as a museum educator was to do teacher programs. And so we would do teacher workshops, we would do teacher happy hours, we would write lessons for teachers, all sorts of things. But, there's nothing that can replace actually being in a real art museum with other people talking about the art. It's just magic to me is what it is. And I feel like in my job at Art Class Curator, I've kind of created my own little museum. I get to explore works of art. I get to talk about art for my job. I get to share it with the world. I get to share it with students and teachers. But there is something different and something special about actually being in the same space with the artwork. So that's what we do for this workshop. We actually do visit art museums and spend time in them together. And that, I think, is the best part of it to me, is to just be in the space. So we started offering this workshop about 5 years ago. The first one we did in Dallas, and I did it at a co-working space conference room. And we spent most of the day in the conference room. And then the afternoon, we headed over to the Dallas Museum of Art, where we wrapped up a lot of the work that we did. And then the 2 years after that, we did the Meadows Museum, which is on the SMU campus in Dallas. And we were actually in a classroom at the Meadows. And I love their education team. They're great collaborators. And it was really lovely. But all 3 of those workshops that we did, the biggest feedback that we got on our surveys at the end, everybody was like, it was so great. Otherwise, the heat, people were like, it's hot outside. We went out, you made us go outside and it's hot. But the biggest thing that we saw was people wanted more time. That one day was not enough time to really dive into the content like we wanted. So in the past years, we did a lot of, how to discuss art with kids or with your students, how to lead engaging activities with works of art. And, we packed all of that into that 6 to 8 hour time frame. And so this year we decided it would be wise to try to add a second day so that we could slow down. And also, if you've been following us for a long time, you've noticed that our focus has really shifted to a more of a personal connection with works of art. And we really wanted that to be a strong component in the workshop as well, that not only how are you going to bring the art to your students, but how are you personally going to connect with the works of art too? And that will fuel your students' art connections if you are personally connected to art. So we added the second day to really allow ourselves the time to develop those art connections. And that second day made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. It was magical, and I'm so excited to get into it. And it's funny too, because it was the same time of year, but this year with the extra day and everybody getting to know each other better, they actually walked and wanted to go outside and walk to the museums because we were just down the street from them. And so, yeah, it was fantastic. I'm so excited to do it again.
Yeah, it was, you've never seen 3 more excited people. Me and Madalyn and Jen were at the workshop, and we left at 5:00. It was over and no one wanted to leave. Everybody just felt connected to each other, and we were all having a hard time walking away. And we were so excited and so thrilled by the workshop and the connections that we made that we did not stop talking from like 5 p.m. until 1 a.m. We were staying in an Airbnb. We ordered Uber Eats food, and we just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked until we couldn't talk anymore because we just had such a wonderful experience. So I can't wait to tell you all about that. So this year we did it in Fort Worth, Texas. So we moved across the Metroplex, and it was perfect. So this year, the summer in 2022, we were going to do it in the 2022. Can you believe that? Sorry. We're going to do it in the same place. So the workshop is at the Fort Worth Community Art Center. And what's beautiful about that is Fort Worth, if you've never been, has really amazing art museums. There are 3 main art museums. They're all like across the street from each other in the cultural arts district. And the Fort Worth Community Art Center is right across the street as well. So all 3 museums that we visited and the space for the workshop were all within walking distance, really close to each other.
And the Community Art Center had art of its own. So it was really like its own little mini museum too. It was great.
Yeah. And the workshop is in the galleries. So we are not only like, we're not just in a conference room, we were like in the room with the art too. And the art was so cool
it was
at the space. Oh, it was so good. Another thing that made it so special this year is, we've been living through this pandemic, and most of us hadn't had the opportunity to spend time with our colleagues in so long. So it felt so good to be in the room with people again after such a long hiatus of that. The other thing that we wanted to add to the workshop by adding a second day was to add more art making. So in the galleries and past workshops, we would do drawing activities and things like that, but we never really did any real art making. And so that was another goal of ours for this year, was to add that component in, because we're art teachers. We want to have the chance to make too. And so making art inspired by art in the gallery, surrounded by art with other people who love art. Oh, just gives me chills thinking about it. It was so good. So do you want to just walk through and it kind of, I was going to go through the outline of kind of what we did in the workshop to tell you guys about it. And part of me feels like I'm spoiling it, if you were to come again, but also I don't think so, because it's a fluid thing, because the art is always changing and the ideas are always changing, that hearing about it is not the same as living through it.
And the people are always changing. And we have one person who is a member of the Curated Connections Library that's signed up every single time, and actually missed one due to life. But he has come every single time that he could, and it continues to enjoy it and see what changes. And so even though some of the stuff we talk about might be the same, it's going to be a unique experience every time.
Yeah. And you change too. And with the connection being so strong, with the personal connection to work of art, what happened to you in the last year is relevant to your experience. And so depending on where you are in your life, every time you come, you're going to have new layers of experience based on that as well. So our first day at the workshop was kind of the same format as our past workshops, where we did a lot of talk about art discussion, how to lead art discussions. I led sample art discussions, and then we also talked about, strategies for that. And then one of the things that we did differently this year was that we had the participants make their own sketchbooks when they came in on the first day. And we taught that process, how to stitch them, hand stitch them. We painted covers for them. You learned about how to fold the paper and how to stitch, how to tape it all together. And that was so fun. And I love my sketchbook. Like, I value it, and I'm never going to throw it away. I think it's so cool. And I think it was such a cool thing, because then you had all the participants of the workshop had a place to keep all of their notes. And now they have this sort of memento or document of their memories from the workshop. And we made the art in there. We did all the activities in there. So we had the sketchbook that we used, that's a memento for the teachers, but I love the idea of the kids making these in the class at the beginning of the school year too, because then all of your art connection things that you do, all of your, warm-ups and things can happen in those sketchbooks. And I think the student is less likely to want to throw it away at the end of the year if it's a book that that they've made and they've invested so much into it rather than just some sort of, cheap spiral notebook that they just throw away at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it was a process and it definitely took a little more time than we thought it was going to, but it was so much fun and they're so personalizable. I don't know if that's a word, but because we just had a bunch of, different paints and stuff out there and everybody's came out looking so different. And, you could add as many or as few pages as you wanted to. And, all of the worksheets and stuff that we used, everybody just glued in. And so it was just this one thing that we could take around and you didn't have to worry about it. And I love the scrapbook nature of that because it becomes the memory of the event in a way that it wouldn't if you just had a folder that you threw in the back of your car at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I loved that time too, because it was right at the beginning. We had already done introductions and stuff, but it was a time that we got to chat with everybody there. We got to get to know people. We had a chance to, the elementary teachers were talking to the high school teachers about how do we take this and use, drop this down to an elementary level to make the sketchbook easier for the little kids to make. And, there was a lot of talk about modifications. And I think because we had that sort of low key time at the beginning, everyone had that chance to build some connections and foundations at the beginning that served us the rest of the workshop too.
Yeah. It was a great opportunity too, to talk about just the art making process because no one had made them before. You didn't really know how it was going to end up looking, even as you made your cover. And so there were several of the teachers who were like, oh, that didn't come out how I wanted it to or whatever. But then by the time it was all bound and all the pages were in it, everybody loved it because it's that process of imperfection that you get to do with your students too, which was so fun to see and play out. And I think you can forget that sometimes whenever you're in front of the classroom all the time.
Yeah. And I know, speaking from my personal experience, I get really nervous making art with other art teachers because they're so good, and you're just like, oh, I'm not going to be as good as them. And I get all up in my crap about my own talents. And so I always get a little bit apprehensive, and I did with this too, because I wanted my stitches to be just so perfectly straight. And my stitches they're not. I gave up midway through. I was like, there's no way I'm getting, but then now I really love how imperfect they are. So it was really fun. We all talked about our own creative processes and shared those every other people had those same insecurities and we were just laughing about them. So it was a really fun time. So we spent, we did that in the Fort Worth Community Arts Center in the galleries around the art in our room was I forgot the name of the artist. I'll have to pull it up on my phone, but it was, I want to say it was a Mexican artist, but he was very surrealist, very Frida Kahlo-like. Really,
Armando Sebastian.
Yes. But yeah, the art in the galleries was so cool and weird and amazing. And so every time you look around at anybody, you're just also getting this awesome art behind us. We had such a kick out of the art that was in the room. So then we learned about art discussion, practice art discussion. And then the first museum that we went to after lunch was at the Amon Carter Museum, which is across the street from the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. And the focus of the Amon Carter Museum is American art since about 1840s. And they also have a large photography collection as well. And I used to work at the Amon Carter as a gallery teacher back right before I was in grad school. And so a lot of the art from the Amon Carter has ended up in the Curated Connections Library because I have such a strong connection to that art. I spent so much time with it teaching back in 2004, I think is when I worked there. And so what we did in the Amon Carter is we went and we practiced a lot of the gallery activities that we teach at Art Class Curator, writing poems, drawing activities, all sorts of different activities that we did with works of art. And it was a whirlwind. It was fast. We did a lot in a very short time, but it was really fun. Is there any activity that really stood out to you?
Oh, goodness. So There was one where we were looking at the mobile.
Oh, yes. Oh, that one was so good.
And we had them do a kinesthetic activity. And so they were was it a dance?
It was an interpretive dance.
And yeah, like an interpretive dance of this mobile. One group just really went for it, and it was so great. And they got a standing ovation. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, one girl was wearing this really long skirt, and it was a Calder mobile. And she pulled out her skirt to make this really cool, like triangle shape. And then she like slowly spinned. And they had to, in the activity, we told them it had to be like a group. Like it can't be they all just moving separately. They had to like be responding to each other. So they were all like doing movements I'm doing all these movements like you can see me, but they're doing these movements, and then that would trigger other movements. And it was so good. I forgot about that one.
That. And yeah, I also loved the poetry activities that we did. We were in one of the smaller spaces and just had everybody pick an artwork they were drawn to, and then they could, do one of the poetry templates that we have. And I remember 2 people chose the same artwork. And so to see their different interpretations and to really like dive into how they saw it, and everybody was like giving their own little what they saw in the art. It was great. I loved that.
Yeah, that one artwork that they both chose, it was so funny because it was like, wasn't it cork in just like a pattern?
I think it was pieces of wood. Wasn't it? Like,
yeah, it was like wood or cork, or like it was just basically like a wood texture that was kind of like like
pieced together.
Yeah. And one person's was really about more of the materials. Another person was more about like the feelings of it. And it was there were totally different interpretations coming at it. This really simple artwork, they didn't have a lot to it, but really deep interpretations, but totally different. And I love that about art, that two people can look at the same thing and have completely different experiences. So fun. Another one we did was, and these activities would change every time we do this because we picked the activities based on what art was there. So whatever art's there, we're going to pick the best activity for that artwork. We don't just have an activity and then pick an artwork. We let the artwork tell us what it wants. We did one where it was like this futuristic scene. It was like this giant painting. It was in a stairwell, and it was this giant futuristic thing. And then they had to draw themselves as if that was like their neighborhood. Or no, did they draw themselves or their home? Now I don't remember.
I'm looking at the artwork. Yeah, they had to draw themselves as if they were a part of the painting.
Yeah, so it's like in this sort of futuristic robotic type of style, and then they had to add themselves into it. So a little drawing activity. And so we did lots of little things like that. We did an Elements and Principles. I call it the Elements and Principles Shuffle, which I've never actually put on the website, but I've done it in workshops where you look at a painting and then you assign each person an element and or a principle. And so half of the people get an element, half of the people get a principle. They look at the painting, they write their thoughts about it, and then they have to pair up. So then like an element person goes with the principal person. And so if the element person is shape and the principal person is rhythm, they then have to discuss how the shape creates the rhythm, or how the shape or the line creates the movement or whatever. And so then they pair in different ways and then have little mini conversations. And then we kind of talk as a big group about it. So it's just one way to really analyze the elements and principles and how they work together. So we did that in there too. We did a lot. There was a lot of activities that we did in that sort of 2-hour span at the museum, but it was awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and I loved it because by the end of that day, like people had already kind of like, you kind of found your person. And, we had them mixing and matching in different groups. So everybody got to know everybody. But yeah, by the end of that day, it was like, okay, like I found somebody that I could hang with, my little teacher friend. Well, it was just so fun to see everybody come together around art. That's what art teachers do. And, they're so often the only one in school. So.
Oh, yeah. Getting to be with people who actually do the same job that you do. It's not as common as for art teachers as it is for other subject areas. So the first day was super full. It was really inspiring and engaging. And we had a lot of new ideas and energy around the artwork. And so we wanted the second day to really be focused on the personal connections with the works of art, and really wanted to see what it was like to dedicate a whole day to really fostering that connection. So we met again at the Fourth Community Art Center on the morning of day 2. And we did some warm-up activities in the galleries there. And that was super fun. We did the memorization activity where you have the participants look at the painting for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then they have to turn their back and then recreate it and draw it. Or I've also had students write about it or explain it, and I draw it. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but we had the teachers drawing it. And that's when we had our we were in this gallery. Do you know the name of the artist of that gallery?
With the birds.
With the birds.
Gail Gibbs.
Okay.
Gale.
Okay. So we were in this gallery. This is not really related to the workshop, but it is. But we were in this gallery with this work by Gail Gibbs, and they're very narrative art, but also very symbolic. There was all sorts of symbols in it. And then we noticed as we were kind of exploring the gallery after the activity that there were these birds in lots of the artworks. And then they were magic birds.
Yes. That was even the title of one of the paintings. Well, it was like painting and collage. So it was like mixed media. But
and there was text on there. She would write stories onto the paintings too. And so apparently these magic birds would come and do something in this village. So then we started to realize that these magic birds were in all of the paintings. And then we got so excited. I think that was a great moment because like, okay, so you're in a room with a bunch of strangers, and, everybody's kind of getting to know everybody after the first day, but then we are big nerds. So, and we love art, and we get so excited whenever, like it's the same thing that happens in the classroom whenever you're having an art discussion. Absolutely.
And so that was what happened. Like we finally started to see like the connecting thread. So me, you, and Jen were just like going around the room like, oh, but look at this. And over here, like the bird is doing this, and like trying to like piece together what the story was. And it was like, I think by the end of it, like we looked up and like everybody else had already finished, but it was amusing to like watch them watch us too, because they were like, oh, okay, like we can like get into this. Like this is not a like really stuffy event. Like let's all just be really excited about art together.
Yes, I love that, because we were overly excited, almost embarrassingly excited about just how delightful it was. We were just so utterly delighted by these magic birds. And yeah, that moment when you look up and like everybody's like done and we're the only ones left. We're like, oh, we're leading this thing. I guess we should go keep teaching this thing. But it was fun because I think that is something, and it's something I've thought about before kind of recently, is that when I was younger, I would get excited about things that other people didn't think were as cool. Like, and so I would get overly excited by something ridiculous. And I still do that. Like the way a tree is growing, or, like something totally random, and I get overly excited about it, and people roll their eyes at me and they're like, why are you so excited about this? But I'm like, I feel like people stuff that out, and I love how excited we got about those.
Oh yeah, we were completely unironically enthusiastic.
Totally charmed and totally delighted.
Yeah, we were so like, yeah. And those are the moments that we want to have and that we want to inspire. And I think that's a big reason why over the years it has shifted away from appreciation and into connection. And it was so special on the second day, especially, to see that happen for the teachers, because we hear stories all the time from people who've just found us or people that are members of the library that are having these moments with their students. But to have it as just an individual and as an adult among other adults, like that was a very special experience too, that I think is just way too rare.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me, there have been times when I've been teaching work of art with a group of kids where somebody makes some sort of observation, that is so brilliant and so delightful and so interesting that everybody is just so excited about that idea. And then, and you feel like you're a part of a community. You feel like you've got this shared experience together, this shared connection. You feel like just connected in a way that you just don't feel connected that often.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Gottman Institute. They talk about relationships and more romantically, but I think it works with really any group of people. It's the magic connection that really happens in relationships is whenever people are together looking at a third thing. Like, I think that's even one of their things is the third thing. So, it's you and another person and you're looking at the third thing, and can you like both look at it together and like have this moment around it? And that's what we were doing. But it wasn't the third thing. It was like however many people were there. But that magic of people looking at something together, and, art is the perfect thing for that. Just, it opens up a relationship in a way that nothing else can.
Yeah, that was so fun. So the rest of the day, we spent really dialing into the personal connection element. So after that, we headed over to our second art museum, which was the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. And if you have never been to the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, you are missing out. They have an amazing building, an amazing collection. And it was a perfect place for this activity because the art is mostly modern and contemporary. So it's basically, I think the earliest stuff they have, like a Picasso. So like the earliest stuff they have is probably 1930s, 1940s. But most of it, they have a lot of abstract expressionism. And then they have a lot of contemporary art as well. They have Kehinde Wiley. They have, all sorts of a wide variety of modern and contemporary art. And so I was really worried about doing this. This is always something I've wanted to try, but I was a little nervous about it. And I even pared it down a little bit with those nerves. So what I wanted to do is at first we gave everyone an opportunity to just explore the museum on their own so that they got to see everything. We spent, I think, an hour maybe, and everybody explored the museum. And then their task was to pick one artwork and spend 20 minutes with it, and only that artwork. And I wanted to do 30, but I was like, oh, they might revolt at me with 30. That feels too long. So we did 20. And the assignment was you pick an artwork, you sit in front of it. That we had, the gallery stools, they didn't have to stand. And then you're not allowed to Google it. You're not allowed to get on your phone at all. You can take notes, you can sketch, you can read the label, but you can't leave that, your artwork that you chose. And so I chose a Rothko because I was like, I wanted to choose something kind of challenging for myself. And I knew a lot of people had really strong connections to, like, emotional connections to Rothko. And I've never really had that. So I was like, I'm going to see what happens. So, everybody goes to their artwork. And I was planning on going and like taking pictures of people, but instead I just hung out with my artwork, set a timer for 20 minutes. We all came back and 20 minutes was not enough time. Instead of them revolting, everybody was like, we need more time.
It was so great because I had the same anxiety. Like, I was like, no, it's going to be great. But then, like, whenever it actually came time, because, we gave everybody time to look and pick. And so I like picked mine out and I went back up there, and I remember sitting down being like, oh, like, it's going to be really hard to like not look at my phone or like do whatever. But like, I got settled, and the only reason I knew that 20 minutes had passed, because I wasn't smart, I didn't set a timer, was that I saw one of the other workshop participants walking back downstairs. And I was like, wait, what? And I looked at my phone and it had been 20 minutes, and it was so great.
Yeah. I try to, but I don't, to deliberately spend quiet, uninterrupted time, not on a device, not watching a show, not even reading a book. Like, it was very just quiet, settled, unmoving time, undistracted time. And it was really lovely to be in that space. And then it was really lovely for me too, as the leader of this event too. I felt this, I was like kind of feeling my body, and I was like, I'm not feeling my, I was feeling these like energetic tugs to all the areas of the museums. Like I felt connected to everybody in the museum that was with me, but they weren't with me looking at the same artwork. So I was like, I was alone for 20 minutes in front of this artwork, but I didn't feel alone. I felt like I was with you all still. Yeah. It was a really weird feeling, but it felt really good.
It was very meditative.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just made me want to like go and do that every single day. Yeah, it was hard to even like fully articulate. But whenever we did come back together as a group, everybody was like, they said the same thing. Like they were worried. They thought they were going to get bored. But then just the more like our brains are story making machines. So even if you're looking at something very abstract, which a few people had chosen, like you don't stop coming up with new ideas, new insights, and we're connection making machines in a way.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah. So we all did that. And then we joined back together in a gallery. We didn't walk around to everybody's artwork because it was a big museum. We didn't want to have to like, and everybody was kind of tired at that point, but we all, shared which artwork we sat in front of, what our insights were. And it was so wonderful to hear all the different connections people were made. There were a couple people who made really strong connections to their own art making practice. They picked something that is something that they maybe would be drawn to, like in their own practice. And so they learned some drawing tips by looking at it. They learned ways of composing. There was someone had recently had a death in the family, and they had like an intense connection with the artwork because of that. There was, like some more like, didn't you choose like more like a feminist type of one? Did you do the one upstairs with the text?
So it didn't have text. I do this weird thing whenever I really have a strong connection with art where I don't take pictures. I don't know why, but so I don't remember. I just have to. So I don't remember the artist or the name. I'm sure it might still be there, but it was black and white, and it was like this from the neck up, like portrait of what looked maybe like a Black woman, but then there was also like a theater scene kind of in the back, but it was all like smushed. It looked like someone had taken the wet paint and like flattened out the top of it. Yeah. And so it was like almost ruined, but not. And
it was Lorna Simpson.
Ah, yes. That's correct. And there was like an iceberg feeling, but yeah.
So, I mean, it was just so powerful to just sit in a room and hear everyone's personal connections to the art that they saw. And it made me want to do more activities like that and more groups like that. So coming up in the next couple months, you're going to hear, I've got a new program coming up that's not related to this. So if you're just really inspired by this particular part, we've got more for you coming up too, in addition to this workshop. So we did that. Then we had lunch. So we were at the Modern. We ate lunch at the Modern because the Modern has a delicious cafe, and they have, that food was really good. So we had lunch, and then we met back again at the Fort Worth Community Arts Center after lunch. And we didn't tell. So this is spoiling it a little, but hopefully I think it'll be fine. But what
you'll forget by next
you'll
summer.
Forget. Yeah. Don't think too hard about this or remember it too hard. But so we got back and we talked a little bit about how we like to pair art making with the Art Connection experiences. We don't want to do copy versions. We want to be inspired by it, but we don't want it just to be like, here's an iceberg, so let's paint icebergs. We want you to find a personal connection. So what we did with the art making in the afternoon is we said, okay, so you spent this time with the artwork. Now make an artwork that is inspired by your experience with the artwork at the Modern. Mm-hmm. And so we had, I think, an hour, maybe 2 or an hour and a half. I don't remember. It was plenty of time. Everybody had time to finish. And we had collage materials out. We had paint. We had markers and colored pencils. And we had the leftovers from people's covers for the sketchbooks. And we just kind of let it be open. And I liked more structure. And so I was worried about this. I was like, oh, what if this just flops? Oh, it didn't flop at all. It was so good. Like the art that those teachers made, so deeply personal and related to their own personal journey, related to the art, but not copies of it. You could see their personality in the artwork. I mean, it was just pure magic.
Yeah, I am getting teary thinking about it because it just I want to find the right words because like I said, like everybody was starting to connect more and more and like find their people even within the group. And, we almost forgot to look at the art together because we haven't talked about it yet, but we did another thing after they made the art, but before we all looked at it together, and they're like, but oh no, we've got to like show each other the art. And it ended up being the absolute best part because art making is always deeply personal, no matter what it is about. But to have just sat in front of art and had this like intense experience, and then to immediately go back and be inspired by it and make something from it. Everybody had something different, but every piece revealed something about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's always going to be a couple people that aren't as talkative. And even those people, like, it came alive. Like, I felt like I really got to see every individual person. And it just overwhelmed me with, like, several people were, like, teary and, like, happy because it was so good.
Yeah, it was probably, that day, it's a highlight of all of my teaching life. I feel like it was a highlight. And I've taught a lot of the groups of people, over the course of my career. And that was one of the best days. Absolutely one of the best days. Because it was like it came together. Like we saw all the things we've been talking about with Art Connection, all the things that are meaningful to us that we spend so much time thinking about and talking about at Art Class Curator. And just to see it happen in real time right in front of us, like, it was so good. So we did another activity too that day. And I honestly can't even remember all of these. So we're recording this in October. You're going to listen to this in November. The workshop was in July. So I don't remember all the art. I do have videos of it all, but I can't even like, what is it in one of these? I just remember the one where she took elements of everybody's book covers and collaged them together into a landscape with a boat.
Yes. Yeah. She made leaves, I think, out of the different parts of everybody's notebooks, but it was like a river or lake scene.
Yeah.
But it was like a pop out. So like, because she likes to kayak, and so there was the kayak like going into the notebook, and that was incredible, and just
so much good. So the last thing we did on that day was I like to do a sort of a culminating activity. So we went to our third museum, which was the Kimball Art Museum, which is another really beautiful space. And they have a very wide collection of art. So it was perfect for this activity. They have art from all over the world. They have art up until basically when the modern starts. Their art in the 1940s, like Kimball goes up until that date. But they have Egypt, they have pre-Columbian art, they have, and they have like one or two of each type. They don't have 10 examples of ancient Egypt art. They have one really good example of ancient Egypt art. So it's a really cool museum. And so what we did is they got into groups and then they planned an art activity. So they looked at the artwork together. They thought, how would they teach it with their kids? So they planned the discussion, planned an engaging activity, and planned a project. And so everybody went and did that. And then everybody presented their activities to the group. And that's always really fun because you get to just take everything that you learned from the whole 2 days and apply it all together and actually, practice what you've been learning.
Yeah, so I feel like, the way we talk about art education is so different than what I feel like anybody else is doing. And it's amazing to see the teachers who, whether they have, followed us since the beginning or just recently found us and wanted to do a workshop, like to see the absolute magic of doing it this way, of not just being 100% art making and project focused, but to really dig deep and get to the emotions and the stories, not just behind the artwork, but behind the individuals and behind your students and behind yourself. And yeah, to see that culminate in lessons and questions that they wanted to ask their students, and they wanted to, show them artwork that was going to mean something to them. And also, and they did have fantastic project ideas at the end of it. And yeah, it was, and every artwork was so different, and every lesson was, even though they all followed the same format, they were as individual as the teachers themselves.
Yeah, it was so fun. The one that stands out to me the most was, and I'm not participating in the activity. I was just kind of walking around watching people taking pictures and kind of dropping in on groups. And I was watching this one group with this painting. I think it's a Frederick Leighton. So it's Frederick Leighton's portrait of May Sartoris. And I was watching them pick this painting, and I was like, oh, that is not one I would have picked. I was like, that one seems weird, So I was like, I can't wait to see what they did, but they were into it. Like that, I was watching them and they were talking and talking and talking. And then they went over to a table and they're working and working and work. Like they were just so engaged in this activity. And then the activity that they chose, that they did, was so good. It was like about fashion, and like the kids like planned their own, I don't know what the project was, but it was some sort of fashion related project. And I was just amazed at where they went with it, because, it was just not one that I would have chosen. I would have naturally been drawn to, but they were so into it. And what I loved was, the whole time, the way we talk about Art Connection is not about art history. It's not about, okay, let's learn about Frederick Leighton and let's learn about how he painted, and let's learn about May Sartoris, whoever this is in this painting. And then we're going to learn all about them. And I'm going to tell you all about that. And then you're going to write that down, and then you're going to do a portrait. It's like, it's something different. It's something bigger. It's something more connected that, yes, the student doesn't then know all about Frederick Leighton or May Sartoris, but they have looked at this painting and they found their way into it, and they found themselves in it. And I think that to me is more important than any fact I could tell them, or anything. And I think you don't really truly understand it until you've been in the room and experienced that magic for yourself. And it's like, once I realized it existed, I became addicted to it. I like dedicated my whole life. Like, I got to keep doing this, because this is feels so magical and important and meaningful to me, that I just want everyone to have that same experience, the same magic.
It's the teaching high and the light bulb moments all rolled up into one. And, the last couple of years, everybody has been a buzz about social emotional learning and, teaching the whole child. And this is that. Like, it's, if you look back at your own school experience, like, do you remember every fact that you wrote down? Do you remember the perfect timeline of what you learned in history? Or if you did have art history in college, like, yeah, there might be like moments or little details that you remember, but we remember how people made us feel and the connections that we make in learning far more than we remember dates and figures or how to draw a line or any of that. I mean, this way of connecting with art and connecting with students and connecting with each other really is the whole package. And it's, if you can do this consistently and have this in your classroom, I mean, like you said, you made like your own little museum, and that's what the classroom can be. And that's what you can be for all of your students if you just let it happen. And that
was good. That's all that needs to be said about that workshop. That was, that it really was so powerful, so good. And that's what this can be in your classroom, like what Madalyn was saying. I mean, it really can be that way. I had a lot of these types of moments in my classroom where you just saw those light bulbs and you saw those connections, and you knew your students better and they knew themselves better. And it's just truly beautiful. So if you want to come to this workshop, we have it scheduled, and you should. Absolutely, you should, because it is so good. So The workshop will be June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, 2022. So you notice I added in a third day. So like I said, the first workshops we did, people wanted more. That happened this time too. They wanted more. So we're not adding a full third day. We're adding in a reception or like a kind of a social hour, social time on the 22nd in the late afternoon or early evening. So the bulk of the workshop will be the 23rd and the 24th, which is a Thursday and a Friday. It will again be at the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. And then on the 22nd, we will have a special sort of get together. And that way we can get to know each other before we dive into the art connection and learning. We can kind of have a little meet and greet. So the hours of that will be sent to you once you register, but you can plan, if you do register, you can plan on something at 4:00 or after on the 22nd in the afternoon. If you would like to register, you can go to artclasscurator.com/experience. And we have early bird pricing right now until the end of 2021. So until January 1st, you can register for $389. And that will be, that's what we charged last year. And so we're adding more to it. So if you register for our workshop before the end of 2021, you can get a bonus of getting all of the recordings for Call to Art 1 and Call to Art 2, which is the conferences that we did in 2020. It has over 50 hours of professional development sessions. I think the number of presenters is like 75 plus presenters, tons of amazing sessions to hold you over until the summer. So you can get that if you register before the end of the year as well. So you can register at artclasscurator.com/experience, and we will accept a PO if your school wants to pay for it. But I promise you, this is going to be another really magical, I keep saying magical, but it just really was just a really wonderful session that we hope to meet you at. So yeah, any final words for you, Madalyn, about this amazing workshop?
Just come be unironically enthusiastic about art with us. And you're going to connect with art and connect with other art teachers and just enjoy yourself. And it's going to be a vacation and professional development all rolled up into one. And you're going to love it. So come.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again, Madalyn, for joining me to talk about this workshop today. Always a pleasure.
Yes.
And I hope to see you all listening at our summer workshop in June of 2022. Again, it's artclasscurator.com/experience. And I will see you again next week on the Art Class Curator podcast. Bye. When you're a teacher, one thing is certain: the lesson planning never ends. The Curated Connections Library is here to help with hundreds of art connection lessons and activities. Our signature SparkWorks lessons include everything you need to teach an artwork every single week. Each lesson features one diverse and captivating work of art and is complete with discussion questions, engaging activities to create deeper art connections, and related art project ideas. With unique worksheets and PowerPoint presentations, every lesson is classroom ready. Get your free SparkWorks lesson and take a break from lesson planning by going to artclasscurator.com/free lesson. Thank you so much for listening to the Art Class Curator podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and give us an honest rating on iTunes to help other teachers find us and hear these amazing art conversations and art teacher insights. Be sure to tune in next week for more art inspiration and curated conversations.